October. Any changes or additions or deletions from the minutes which you all have received for September? All in favor of accepting September's minutes, say aye.
Aye.
Those opposed?
I was here.
Yeah, the minutes carry.
Only, I am.
You might have been here last month too. Brian, do we want to have your harbor master report first and then get into the fishermen's?
So I have nothing to report except that we're in the middle of budget season, asking for the town to take over the launch. For next month's meeting, we need to put on fees for the launch ramp, which are in place, but we can discuss that, why we haven't been collecting them to date. And that has a lot to do with staff.
So
That should be on my next meeting.
Can you remind me again, how many, the launch, Tom Baker's launch operation, how many members? 60. And what's the fee that we pay?
The charge is about $500.
That's for a year
For a
long
season.
subscription.
That's right.
and
And the intention is that we would use those for supplying that, and then if you ever get transients, yeah, the two items.
It would become just a launch service like Gloucester has, Salem and Marblehead and Beverly all have more than one. Most of them are privately run. If somebody were to step forward and say, hey, I want to buy the launch service from Tom Baker, we would step back and say, have at it.
Yeah.
There isn't that interest. So I can tell you there have been
Can I hear?
email letters to the select board office asking if the town may go into launch service.
Zooming from the.
From outside,
From the
members of.
right. Exactly.
How have they been receptive to those, or is there?
I would say it's mixed so far.
But depends on how much you have to pay.
Well, right, so Tommy charges about 500.
But how much you have to pay to buy the business.
Right, so, he is offering to sell both launches for less than the value of the Duffy, the newer one. So he is profitable as of this summer. He was profitable this year. So, we aren't in the business to make a ton of money, cover costs and put a little into the waterway fund to contribute towards dredging. Every new customer that the town were to sign up would make it into the Blackbird.
Mixed what?
Ink Blacker.
Oh, yeah.
Since he was operating the black with 60 people.
Yeah.
Now, there'll be bigger issues to discuss, like would we offer harbor tours and that kind of thing. But
I think I'd like to, sorry, Mr. Chairman, I'd like to suggest that maybe in the shoulder months, when NYC has got underutilized staff, April, May, and it's hard to get students maybe for that launch service, that there could be some sort of cooperation between have 4 operating launches in the harbor, but
so
in April and May, maybe.
so we can put that for next month.
Yeah, we could put that as a.
That's my only worry is getting employees, because they need to have their launch license or
Yeah,
six pack.
Coast Guard,
Right.
insurance.
so the good news
Definitely.
is that every single one of my staff is licensed. And shoulder season is when I have a harder time giving hours to the people that need it. Right now, there's one college student who wants to come back and drive. The other people that work for Tom who are interested, there are 2 that are interested. That are retired people. Yeah, so I'm not worried about staffing, it's the staff.
I'm just thinking they can be more efficient for both.
Yeah. Yeah, that's a valid discussion.
Is it important for us to understand the workings of what he does in order to?
I think we can discuss that next month.
Okay, we'll do that.
So everything, we can't really discuss it tonight. I'd like to put it on the agenda for.
All right,
Right, that and the launch ramp. I think that's it.
And what about will we talk about your budget next month? And anything that's gonna be added for an assistant?
Right, so that's all in the capital. budget request, that, the launch, and then 8 new no-wake buoys out there. I received, word that a resident would like to see new and uniform no-wake buoys out there, not the, hit or miss. Tired old.
The ones that are on the side.
sinking ones?
Yeah.
Sinking one.
Build a big triangle, like the old.
Yeah, I know.
So you will go over the capital
Yeah.
items next month.
The operating budget will be, flat funded. No increase, so it's personnel and capital,
Nice.
that's standard.
Okay, we'll do that next month. Tonight, I have 2 agenda items. I'd like to take one at a time. And have public comments for 3 minutes before we, the HAC, get into discussing the first item, which is the fisherman's facility. So, if there is anyone that'd like to speak on the fisherman's facility.
Oh, I see a hand up.
Yes, I just want to say that I'm obviously online and it's very difficult. We can barely see you, but also it's hard to follow what you're saying. I don't know if it's how the mics are set up or something, but it's been very hard to hear your discussion.
So Sandy, this is Brian. I'm gonna try to move my computer further out into the room. We're operating off my computer, which obviously is not ideal. It's a lot of the meetings, the Kate Ann folks are here and they know how to run all the stuff out in the hallway. I do not. So let me see if I can improve that condition just a little bit.
Thank you. Yeah, I was debating getting there live, but I couldn't. So thank you, what you can do. And I presume, I mean, you're going to be going over some of the plans for the fisherman's dock and everything that you're thinking about. So we'll be able to potentially comment during this session because it's an open forum. Is that correct?
That's correct. I have actually the drawings that I will be putting up on the screen.
Excellent. Thank you so much.
Let's see, can you see any better now?
I can see a little bit better. When you spoke a second ago, it was loud, but now it's a little muffled. So we'll see when you settle down next to your computer what happens.
All right.
So
Thanks, Dave.
we don't count as far as having the Cape Ann come in and set us up on it?
Good question. So, so Sandy, I will be putting up that. I want to make sure we get everybody who has a hand up addressed because I won't be able to see those once I pull up the drawings. So I think,
Yeah.
Sarah?
Sarah? Oh,
Did you turn the audio on the TV, Brian?
I have no idea how to do that.
There's a button that you push to turn it on.
I will give that a whirl.
And then your computer will connect to the TV and there's a microphone at the top of the TV. There's a thing with lots of plugs in it. You just push the button on that. And a green light should appear on the microphone at the top of the TV in the white bar.
Where, what button do you put? It's, I think it's on the hallway, right, Sarah?
But by the TV,
Oh, by the TV.
there's a multi-pronged plug and you just turn that on. You just push the button and there's a green light on the microphone above the TV that should come on.
See the mic?
I don't want to turn it
Yeah,
off.
let me turn it off.
Yeah. Good question.
And then your computer should connect into that TV.
Oh, the green light's on. I can see the green light.
Okay, that's the microphone.
Okay. So maybe
And
everyone can at least hear us a little better. Thank you, Sarah.
And your computer should be showing on that screen.
It is. Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay,
Okay.
That's
So,
my tech
go
lesson.
ahead and-
But you need to set it so if you want to show your computer to us.
Oh. Okay. These Zooms are complicated.
Yeah, just present.
Can you see that?
Now we can, yes.
Okay, great. So this is. Oh. That's a little better. All right, that is much better. So I labeled this a little bit so we can know where we are in alignment. You can see Beach Street, Masconomo. Where my arrow is, can you see my arrow on the screen?
Yes.
Okay, very good. So this is the Fisherman's Pier right here. And this is the ramp that comes down to the float that's already right here that has the two fishermen on it. So the new facility, the ramp would come down to these floats, which come right around the dredge line. In 2018, when we dredged in here towards Beach Street to get the 8-foot depth. So it would bring these around to repark, and then we would have fingers here, 3 fingers here, and 1 over on the repark side. So each of these fingers would accommodate 2 boats. And presumably that would leave room for, we do have some much smaller fishing boats that would fit in here on the dock. So I think 6 or 7 is probably the number of lobster boats that would fit in here. This is all pile supported. I believe at last count it's 14 pilings. You have the pilings for each of the main floats that come around here. Oh, come in, Maureen, have a seat here. Make yourself comfortable. Dave, you can sit up here too, you. And then 1 piling at the end of each finger. So the way it will work, the lobstermen would be the ones to decide who comes in. We suspect it would be the more senior fishermen.
It's generally how we've left it so far.
Right. The oldest fishermen would get these spots in here. And to go back to the motivation for doing this, we dredged in here so we could make this accommodation. We have a fishing fleet that contributes financially through its work, and again financially through grant funding. Everybody's heard me say this 100 times. I'm sorry, I know I'm a broken record, but our fishing fleet falls right in the middle of fishing fleets in Massachusetts. It's about number 19 out of the 30, I think it's 39 towns that have fishing fleets. So a number of our fishermen is right in the middle. And that has been part of the justification for the millions of dollars in grants we've received. So as Mayor Romeo, that came from Gloucester, pointed out when she was one of the SEC members who approved money for the engineering and permitting of this project, said, the fishing fleet, people say it's dying, fishing is dying, it's not dying, it's changing. Everything changes. Nothing is easier now, including fishing. If we can create an environment where we can have something for future generations of fishermen to look forward to, an opportunity for them as they get older to have a place to come in and tie up, then we keep Manchester a viable port for fisheries, which it has been for centuries. Centuries. Not decades, but centuries. And right in the same area. We even used to have a fish market here. Now they sell ice cream there. So,
So would that be open to the public? So in the
um,
summertime, can tourists go and walk along that?
right, so if this is connected to Reed Park, then you would be able to walk from Masconomo all the way to the drawbridge.
I mean, I see that as a huge asset, right?
Right, so I remember in some of the discussions about planning for the town, a harbor walk. You know, Boston, now you go down 4 Point Channel and it's all supposed to be public access all along the waterfront. So the idea was that you would build where there wasn't access walkways for people to walk along the waterfront. Incredibly expensive to permit, to engineer, and to build, and then maintain. If this is going to be a harbor walk, it's going to be built largely with grant funds, maintained by the transient boaters that come in to this harbor and spend money in downtown. It's, you know, financially, it's a good model. And I know I'm biased because I come from Maine, and I just love to go to small New England towns, and the very best thing to see is the fishing fleet tied up at the dock. We don't have any seine boats. We have lobster, but we do have one seine boat, but we don't have the big trawlers like they have down in Bedford and Gloucester. You know, ours are, you know, smaller operators. We're a small harbor. We really couldn't accommodate those bigger boats. So, Sandy, you've got your hand raised, Mr. Chairman.
Yes, Sandy, please be recognized and state your case.
We have to unmute yourself.
I muting and unmuting.
Yeah.
Sandy Rogers, 82 Old Essex Road. I wanted to you to clarify the numbers that you were saying. So by adding this amount of dock, you are adding up to how many new locations for boats to tie up?
Right, so it looks to me like probably 7. If we had two smaller boats, probably on the order of 20 feet or so, we could probably fit both of those and not just one of those. So maybe 8, but certainly not more than that. And then, so those are going to come from boats that are on moorings existing right now. The intention isn't to add 6 more commercial boats, but to add 2 more commercial boats which will bring us back up to the number that were here when I started.
So net, you're only adding 2 new.
2 new boats in total in the commercial part of the harbor.
Okay. So that's not a lot when you consider we've got to have 14 ugly pilings that we have to deal with. Secondly, I thought at one point you were looking at extending the other side of the dock. And I realized that's sort of where this attachment of the gray, which is the new area, and the white, which I presume is the existing area, is where the emergency vehicle is. So are you shifting where that location is for the emergency vehicle?
Right, so the intention is that the NOAA boat, which is the federal boat, the bigger aluminum boat that's right there at the head of the harbor, the pump out boat and the Eastern would all shift down all the way down to the very end of the docks by the drawbridge. The other finger, the 4th finger there, which we haven't discussed yet, which is on the white, that would be intended for probably the safe boat, the orange safe boat. And the launch service if we continue to have one in the harbor.
Interesting. So that, okay. And is regarding like low tides and everything, is that enough clearance for those boats to shift?
Yeah, so that's a good question, Sandy. Yeah, this facility is designed so that all of the floats meet the requirement that there be a bare minimum of 30 inches of clearance from the very bottom of the flotation in the water. And it is within the dredged footprint where we dredged to 8 feet.
Okay. And, one other thing is, now that we know that the town has been approved to enter into negotiations to use the community center, one of the ideas was that when you built out this dock, that there would be some additional, I don't know, I want to say, facility for the harbor master on the dock itself. That is not part of this plan right now, correct?
It is not. So back when we were actually having the discussion about a harbor visitor center, maritime center and office, that was before the Tux Point docks collapsed into the harbor. And that really became the focus of the harbor department, getting that back and up and running for the citizens. The office is off the table for me.
Right.
I have 3 summers left. We have right now 5 projects going in the harbor, 5 big projects, and I'm not going to have time to move forward with that. There's another project that might be coming up at Tux Point. We'll see. So the office is off for me. But having said that, Sandy, I do want everyone to know that I think it's vitally important that just like your police officers and your firemen, your waterfront public safety department should be located adjacent to their apparatus.
Mhm.
I don't know of any other harbor that doesn't have a harbor master office on the waterfront. They may exist, but like Manchester, they would be the exception to the rule.
Yeah. So yeah, that's why I was concerned about the safety vehicles minimally. So have you posted this on your website, on the town website, and have the financial numbers been run? Because it sounds like a lot of this is happening, and net, it's only going to get 2 more places for commercial. What the costs are, you're going to charge for individuals to use the space, et cetera, et cetera.
Right, so we haven't discussed what the annual cost would be for a lobsterman to be at the spot. Right now, we're charging $500 for the season for the 2 that are in the old harbor master spot right next to the pier. So that hasn't been discussed. We also have not yet applied for the Seaport Economic Council grant for construction. That grant, which we have a near certainty of getting, would pay for 80% of the cost of the construction. This final engineering that we have in front of us here, we also got an engineering estimate for the construction cost. Excuse me, it's $580,000, and that's high because it doesn't take into consideration that the harbor department builds all of the floats. So it's likely that cost would be at least $40,000 less.
So it's going to cost 580,000 or so to build out all of this.
The town share would be 20% of that.
Town share would be 20%, and every year we would only make $1,000.
No, it'd be 500 per boat if we stayed at the $500. So you're talking $3,500.
Well, you were saying net, we would only get 2 more commercial spots.
So by bringing, let's go back to that. We're talking about bringing in, there are 2 boats there now. We're talking about bringing in 4 or 5 more for a total in at this facility. So we would fill this facility. So that would be all from boats out in the mooring field right now.
Ah,
We would then invite two of the commercial operators on the wait list to come in and take over two of those 4 or 5 mooring. That's where the two,
And the others go to the wait list for.
okay, great.
no, this is a commercial area. Area 2 is commercial. It will remain commercial. We will use the space to ensure that we have a really good navigation channel. We have a good navigational channel into this area, and we would use that extra space to get a channel going back out along the docks.
So some of the space that they would relinquish would help keep your line open
It would
for
help keep,
safety reasons.
right, it would help, it would improve navigation in that part of the harbor.
Okay, great.
And get the fishing fleet back up to its strength of 2012.
All right. I don't want to hog the time, so thank you for answering all my questions. I may have more later.
My pleasure. Were there any other hands raised? Maureen?
Yeah, Maureen Creighton, 37 Proctor Street, member of the Finance Committee. Do you have a sense of what the annual maintenance is going to cost on this? Because obviously you're pulling floats out, there's amortization, so.
Right, so if we look at the floats that were here in 2012, they've been in place since 1993. Bob Reed built most of them with the old style of flotation. The decking had failed and the flotation no longer met code. So we pulled those floats out and we found 90% of the floats, the framing, the internal framing, and the hardware was all still viable. So we put new flotation underneath and new decking. And now, so 92 to 22, 30 years later, with a small investment in decking, I expect these floats to not need any service for a minimum of 20 years. What we do right now is the fendering on the outside occasionally needs a screw. Somebody comes in and lands hard, so we have to reattach the fendering. And then every spring, we repaint the safety lines on the docks. And that's usually SCORE students from the high school doing volunteer work. So no cost. And then whatever decking is going to cost in another 20 years. We're very fortunate in this harbor. There's no seat. There's no racking and beating of the equipment. So that's why your floats last so long. And with this new flotation, you can expect the flotation to the framing to last longer because the marine boarders can't get to the wood at
That's
all.
up high.
That's right. That's right. And you have your hand raised?
I did.
Okay.
This area regularly freezes in the winter. What winter preparations would these floats need?
So part of the discussion that the engineers have put forward for all of this, including the Reed Park floats, is to put in a bubbler system. Is one option. The other option is to bring them in where we keep them now behind Town Hall, rafted across the harbor for the winter. The thing to remember about ice, the reason we can put floats inside the drawbridge is because the ice only moves up and down. It's the side to side that causes ice damage. So those are the two options. The bubblers are part of the engineering going on for Reed Park.
It'd be nice to know what the bubblers cost to install, cost to maintain, cost to run.
Right, so the installation for Reed Park, remember, we have 1.8
168 million, and that covers the entire cost of the Reed Park expansion. And that includes the cost of installing the bubblers, the electricity, the water, everything.
Thank you.
You're welcome. Chuck Houghton.
Hi, how you doing?
Good, Chuck.
I got a terrible video, but I have two questions. First one you can guess is on the pilings.
Yep.
What's the spacing of the pilings along the back of the docks there, Byam, please?
So, one per float, actually. So there's 10 floats going around from Masconomo to Reed Park, and then one out at the end of each of the finger floats, which are a little narrower. So it'll be a total of 14 floats, and that's one per float.
So do they have to have one per float, or because the
Yeah.
spacing is much smaller than on the Masconomo float, the existing floats there?
Yep. So we talked to the engineers about that. And we were a little surprised, and we're surprised to learn that the engineering standard has changed. So
Okay.
that's the reasoning for that.
Okay. But does it have to be that way, or is they just is that just a guide?
According to the engineers, yes.
Okay, all right. Second question is on the existing floats. I know it's for the townspeople, when they come in, there's not a lot of room to come in and drop, stop to get an ice cream and stuff. And I talked to you before, and you had indicated maybe when the town boats leave and move to the outer docks that they're gonna build, that we would have that area, extra area for coming in. But it looks like now that's gonna be being used. So is there any plan for giving, expanding the free dock space?
Yeah, my intention would be that, the town, there was always 75 feet. With this public safety boats now, obviously, we know we only have 50 feet because they take up one of those floats. The intention is to get back to 75 feet of free half-hour dock space.
Okay. And the finger that's on the existing floats, are there gonna be fishing boats on either side of it?
Yes, yep.
So that's gonna take up even more dock space. So,
Well,
What are you talking about?
do you mean the single finger right there?
the single finger S301, I guess the one on the top left.
Right. So that one, we can adjust that as we see fit. That is placed right in between two floats. I see exactly what you mean. The idea would be that we would move it towards Beach Street so that the beam of the westerly boat would not overhang that dock. So
Okay.
it'd be a full 75 feet. We wouldn't lose any because of the boat on the slip.
So to get the full free docking space, you're gonna open up dock on the other end near the gangway?
I think, well, so we'll take from where the three free floats are now on the Beach Street end. And if we have to move one, whatever it takes to get that 75 feet towards the ring.
Okay, thank you very much.
You are welcome. And
I-
yes,
Okay, didn't we have a proposal for the pilings originally, and you and I talked about the number has dropped? Can you expound?
oh, sure. So we went through several different iterations of design for this. And one of them had over 50 pilings. Yeah, but they weren't full height, so, I get it, it was a little hard to wrap your brain around. We were talking about having float stops, so that the string of floats going around the outside would have actually been pushed back a little bit. They would have been in much shallower water, but it would have given a little more room to tuck the boats in. But the float stop requires that you have the regular height piling, right? And then one that was high enough to run a rail across, so that when the floats came down, they were suspended above the bottom. They never would have been visible, but that really made people uncomfortable. I got it. I heard that. So we went to this, which gives us a little less space, but dramatically reduces the number of moorings. I mean pilots, sorry. Sandy, I think you were next.
Yeah, you mentioned Reed Park
Mhm.
float extensions. I mentioned this before. I thought there was some potential plans for the other end of the dock to extend that out. Can you explain what you mean by Reed Park extensions?
Sure, so the phase 2 plan goes from the current ending as you're walking towards the drawbridge. The floats would go all the way down to the drawbridge and then an L on the end.
Okay. So my recommendation is we need to see all of this together. Second, we need to see what it's going to look like for pedestrians that are on the street, what this is really going to look like. I have to say that this completely closes in the harbor. It closes in the harbor view. I understand the balance of needing to support fishing in the industry and, you know, concerns about support for the safety vehicles and all that. But, you know, I just personally, I think we really need to see this all together, see the financials all together of what you're planning in phase 1 and phase 2, and have artistic renderings. I think it's really, really important. So if you look and see what we're looking at for Tux Point, people were sort of shocked. We're going to see what that's going to look like in phase 2 of our Tux Point, you know, what that's going to look like. So I think we really need to see that for this. Thank you.
Thank you, Sandy. And Sarah,
Sarah? Did you call on me?
yes.
Okay. At one point you were talking about including a pump out station. I
Right.
don't understand where it is on this picture and when it's going to be installed and what impact that has on the financials of running the docks.
Right, so the pump out station wouldn't be part of the fisherman's facility, the pump out station, and we've had a couple of different discussions about this. My original thought was that the pump out station would be down on the far end of the dock, far away from the park itself, and located so that folks could pull up and it would actually be self-service. That you know, you wouldn't have to staff that. We have the boat right now as well that goes around and pumps out. One of the issues with the pump out station is that Manchester Marine is going to stop participating in all likelihood in the Clean Vessel Act, and therefore won't have to take boats for pump out. So if we don't have a pump off station here for the boat, it makes it nearly impossible. Now, there have been other discussions about locating that pump out station in a different spot. Certainly we can still do that, but wherever we put it, it is going to require site work and infrastructure, you know, piping to get that material into the sewer system, just like Manchester Marine does. So that Sarah isn't part of this project.
Okay, thank you.
Yep. Andrew.
Yes, sir. I just got a quick question. Are those going to be wood pilings or are they going to be the rock socket?
So we're waiting with bated breath. The borings were done this last week, and hopefully we'll hear back from the engineers. Seems unlikely we'll hear back tomorrow, but I expect by next week we'll know whether or not they can be wood or they would have to be rock socketed. Now, I think it's pretty unlikely that they would be anything but wood. This is all filled tidelands, where these flows are proposed and down to the drawbridge. So it's going to be organic sediment and probably glacial till and gravel. Glacial till.
Right. So from aesthetics views, it's gonna pretty much look like any harbor up in Maine or any place else for Fisherman's Wharf.
Any ocean facing harbor, yes.
Copy that. And I got one more question. What's
Yeah.
gonna happen with the crane for the fishermen?
The train,
Crane. To lift the
Crane.
pots off?
oh, the crane for the fishermen.
Yes.
That will stay right where it is.
Roger that.
Dave,
Dave McKenna, 37 Beach Street. So I'm gonna butter to Reed Park. I'm not in favor of the development. I'm hearing the justification for the development is for our fishing industry. We have a waiting list to get a mooring so there's people who wanna join the commercial fishing industry. Are there any commercial fishermen in this call?
Yeah, me.
Okay.
I'm on the committee, but I'm not.
So where's, are people asking for this, and how come they're not here if we have one
Well, I'm a
representative?
representative, that's why I'm here.
Okay,
So the whole idea of this, I mean, on the fisherman's side, obviously is, there's a safety issue also with it, that when it comes like this time of year. And as Brian said, a lot of the guys are getting a little older, so they have to go out in their dinghy and then climb onto their boat from the dinghy, so it's a bit hazardous. Moving material is a little difficult like that too, so that certainly helps to have this to be able to walk down. So it's like so many things, and Brian mentioned it, is the population of the fishermen are getting older. Then this is, I look at that as a safety thing. It's also a bit of a convenience thing. It's a lot faster to go in and out too, so I can't say anything against that. And again, as Brian mentioned before, we've been a fishing community before we were a residential community, so to speak, as far as recreational boating. It started out as a fishing community, so we're just trying to embrace and to keep that movement going. So, like so many other professions and labor-intensive occupations, it's anything that can lend to that is good.
thank you. So my main concern is just the aesthetics of the harbor
I agree.
and trying to keep the quaint village and harbor that we've had for a long time. And so I'll use an analogy. To me, this is like adding 2 asphalt parking spots over Reed Park. Do you think the town would approve that? I would say they wouldn't. I think it's a similar analogy. To me, we're taking the harbor and we're now going to make it feel more like Beverly Harbor, where there's a lot of slips, there's a lot more commercial feel to it. And that's the direction I think we're headed with developing Reed Park. So that's my concern. And I hear you, but to me, that's a convenience, and I wish more people from the public would state whether they have a concern about the aesthetics of the harbor. I do.
Thank you.
Yeah, thanks.
more.
Yeah, I would second that, and I would second what Sandy Rogers said, in that I think what happens in Manchester oftentimes is we apply for grants, we get some seed money, that becomes the catalyst to get things going. And then we start matching funds and we start getting into it. And then we look back later and go, how did we end up here? And we don't oftentimes from the very beginning get-go, take a look at the whole thing. And I would second that. I think you want to see this plan from basically the corner of Manchester Marine's dock all the way around to Morse Pier and probably to the Harbor Boat Club, just so we have an aerial view of the whole thing, not just a snapshot. And then I really do think that the renderings, as viewed from basically, Union Street, Beach Street, looking out, are important. And I've mentioned this before, as you come into the harbor, the pilings that are now at Tux Point are a very, very different look from the water and from the land than we had before that work was done. So I think we ought to go into this really eyes wide open. And my recommendation would be take the time to get some renderings and really understand the whole project.
So, we don't have, the design yet for the Reed Park expansion. That is not done yet. Certainly, once that's done, we can have both put that together to look from any perspective we want. But we don't have that piece yet, so we can't.
Conceptually, you know what it's gonna look like.
I do know what it's gonna look like, and so me personally, I don't see a fishing fleet in a harbor that was a fishing village that docks at the head of the harbor as a paved over appearance. I don't see it. I don't see it when I go to Belfast or Rockland or Camden. I see.
Do you feel the
vibrant-
difference when you take your boat into Beverly Harbor versus when you take your boat
I don't
into
think this is gonna look like Beverly Harbor.
Marblehead or?
I don't see Beverly.
Manchester?
I don't see Beverly because they don't have their fishing fleet at the forefront. The fishing fleet for me is aesthetically extremely appealing. I understand. I come from Maine. It's a different aesthetic, but this harbor first had a fishing aesthetic.
I love the fishing,
And
I
then
love
starting
the fishing
in the
fleet as well.
1950s and 40s, dredging happened, and we were allowed to expand and improve the harbor so that we could introduce the recreational boating. But I do not see this piece right here as detrimental to a New England waterfront community, not a fishing fleet.
I just think a fishing boat on a mooring in open water is a lot more aesthetic looking and beautiful than a boat on a pier next to a piling almost on land.
I absolutely respect that. I do. The other thing to remember about part of the motivation for this facility and the Reed Park expansion is to generate revenue for a harbor. Remember that there was not money invested in this harbor for several decades. And the docks and piers were in a state of collapse, literally a state of collapse. And yet we have taken advantage of a lot of grant money. There's been a lot of rapid change to the harbor. Some of it forced on us by permitting and engineering. Some of it for me is thinking down the road 20, 30 years, which is not that long. When getting these grants, they will not exist anymore because state and federal money is going to be going to trying to keep Gloucester and Salem and Boston and New York City and every other place from being submerged and what it's going to cost to retreat and move back. There won't be money for small harbors and small projects. So this harbor for a long time was taken advantage of by out-of-town boaters, overwhelmed. Part of the harbor where you live, Dave, was completely and utterly overwhelmed up until 2019. The police chief, when he was a sergeant, was charged with coming down and writing tickets to violators at those 3 docks that existed. He wrote 200 tickets and made no difference at all. So when we put in this 250 feet, it absolutely is a difference. But this part of the harbor is now civilized, well managed, and people are very happy to contribute to Manchester to the maintenance of Manchester without overwhelming the harbor in a way that just didn't exist. So in 20 years, if the very simple back of the napkin math that you do on Reed Park suggests that with a 66% increase in fees, which you can justify with the water and electricity that's coming, and the number of feet that we're going to have, this facility can put over $100,000 a year into the waterway fund that can contribute to the ongoing needs like dredging for the harbor, repairing seawalls. The seawall at Masconomo cost $327,000 to repair a portion of it. That came 80% from the grant that I do not believe will exist in 20 or 30 years. This facility would give the town an opportunity to make the harbor at least much closer to self-sustaining without going to the property owners and asking for tax dollars when they're gonna be trying to figure out how to pay for moving electrical, moving sewer, moving water, moving buildings away from rising water. Yes.
I was just gonna say, it's about choices.
Yeah.
And Greg Fettersfield, town manager, talks about this all the time.
Mhm.
I did a study on this about 6 months ago. If you add up all the property owners that abut the water, from Boardman Ave all the way over to almost the Magnolia line. And you took less than 1% of their taxes, you would blow that 100K completely out of the water.
Yep.
So, and if you step back and say, the landowners who are abutting the water are benefiting from it, and the town is benefiting from that. That's a huge source of money right there. Now, it gets pulled from something else,
Right.
Old chapel, a fire truck, whatever. It's all about,
Yeah,
it's all about
that-
choices, but at the
But
end
that
of the
money
day,
is allotted, they count on that coming through already, it's the
Well,
tax money.
everything is allotted. But at town meeting, we vote on what that allotment is. We make choices. And I am just suggesting that we take a serious look at the aesthetics here. Because if we're putting in pilings and all of that for $100,000 or whatever, we ought to just go into it with our eyes open. Because, I think you could wake up someday and say, geez, I used to be able to drive down Beach Street and look straight down at Marblehead Light at the other end of the.
You're
And
still,
now-
it's down
Yeah,
low.
no,
You're
but-
still
But are the
up over
pilings
top.
gonna be up
There's,
to
there's
business?
only 10 pilings in there. It's not that many. I don't think.
There's 14 of them.
Oh, there's 14?
The total.
14.
14.
The ones along Masconomo Park, they're not gonna be view blocking because they're looking down towards actually Combs property.
Yeah, my position is not against this.
Yeah.
My position is just that we understand what we're walking into. And then from the whole project point of view.
I agree, and if, when I started here in 2012, the town had said, you get 1/4% harbor of the tax value, you get 1/8% for the harbor to maintain this harbor every year. We would be having a discussion about all this, I'm sure, because the infrastructure would have been funded. But the infrastructure hasn't been funded by tax dollars since long before I started. The harbor was left completely alone. So I come at it from, I get it, taxpayers, they've got enough to worry about without having to pay for what so many people assume is a luxury for people. And let's fund this ourselves. And how do we do that? Well, we can keep going up on the mooring fees forever. But that sure
Which
doesn't.
more likely will probably happen, it's maybe at a lesser rate, but like you were saying though, about the tax money and the U-mooring too, it's like. the town infrastructure, we have a lot of things coming up in town, that we're gonna have to foot the bill for, whether it's just, the schools or. We still have to upgrade some water lines, sewer lines, I mean, we got a lot of work to do. Downtown improvements coming back again, so there's gonna be a lot of money to get. I think that if we can generate, like you said, and more so, I mean, this will generate some money. I look at this for on the fisherman side too, is it allows people to fish possibly longer while they're older. Some of our guys are kind of old, but it's a safety issue too. And, you say 100 to 200,000, but you find a guy floating in the pond, that's not really worth 100 to 200,000. I do understand, I respect the aesthetics. I love the harbor. I don't wanna see it, ruined in any way, but the way that it sits too in the height of the wall is you look over the boats, like when you say you wanna look out to that, Marblehead or over that way or Salem. Is that, you don't even look, you don't look through the boats, you look over them now from the top of the wall too, so it'll be down, it's not gonna be. It's not like it's gonna come up higher than the road, you're gonna be looking over the tops of the boats and you look down upon it, not necessarily through it.
Not for 20 years.
Well,
Right.
okay,
Yeah,
yeah, I mean, if,
Right.
I can,
Yeah,
I'll
I'm
take
just-
you on that one too for a little.
Yeah, I know,
while.
I think we should recognize Vicky
Oh,
and then Sandy. Vicky hasn't had a chance to speak yet.
Hey, guys. Yeah, Brian, you had mentioned that the dredging was 8 feet in that area. Is that at high or low tide?
That's at low tide.
That's at low tide.
Yep.
Okay. I just wanted to weigh in that I agree with Sandy that it would be nice to get a visual on this because we're looking at these pilings. Right now everything sort of, shifts around and taken out in the winter time, but those pilings, however tall they are going to be there year round. And I just think like other people have said, I think we need to see it I think it'll be a shock to people. I have no objection to the boats, that are going to be there. But I just don't think those pilings are, especially, if for any reason that they're not the wooden ones, then,
Right.
I think it would be really not a very nice looking addition to the town. So that's all.
Absolutely. So once we get to the point where we have the engineering piece for the next part of the Reed Park docks, we'll absolutely ask both to put together some renderings for us so that we can get a good visual of what that looks like.
Yeah, because what they did for the Tux Point ones was, for where they did all the different views, that was very helpful in being able to see the impact that it's going to have.
Yep, absolutely.
Okay, thank you.
Sure. And Sandy,
Great. Can you hear me?
yes.
Okay, making sure I'm off mute. So the Reed Park extension, have we given approval for you to do the phase that you need to design that out and to do the renderings for all of this?
Well, the renderings weren't ever part of it, but once the engineering folks are done with the drawings and what that would look like, then we can take that and put it together with the existing facility and the fishermen's and put together those renderings so folks can get that visual like the Tux Point drawings.
So the town has approved what you need to get the full extension of the Reed Park floats
Yes.
designed out to. Okay, so that's part of this, and you're just talking about this phase right now, but to what I brought up before, we need to see that all together. Secondly, I want to echo what many people have said here before. I used to go down to Reed's Park, sit there, enjoy it, take pictures. I don't go there anymore because of the docks that are there now. There are no other spaces in town that are open to the public where you can see the harbor. Tux is closed to private citizens. We also have a private end of the dock that doesn't have these pilings, which is I don't know what they call it, a boat club or something, which is closed off to even Manchester residents to enjoy the harbor without seeing these pilings. I don't have an issue with seeing boats. I do have an issue with the dockage, the pilings. The dock that exists right now is very difficult to walk on. I don't see this as a harbor walk or anything like that. So I just want to say that I think we have to think long and hard about what is this really doing financially, aesthetically for our town, because we get a lot of other traffic in town that is the pedestrian traffic that makes up our town, that brings in revenues to our town. And I just want to reiterate, maybe we need again to go back to the table and figure out how do we support what we need for the fishing industry, and how do we retain what we can of the town, and especially considering it sounds like this area is already dredged, but it's really good to see the financials of understanding what are we anticipating in the future? What do we need to dredge? What do we need to, I know you can't be crystal ball people, but like say we need to rebuild a wall here or there, given bad storms that are coming with climate change. Like, what does this sort of all look at? Come up with some scenarios and put that in front of us so that we can sort of make those kinds of decisions. So anyway, and I just want to say I really appreciate all the work that you guys do every day in the harbor and what you're trying to do for the town. So it's just an issue of balancing it out. Thank you.
Certainly, and I am cognizant of the fact that it's your town. I don't live here. I get that. And if the town were to decide you don't want any of this, I still would argue for the fisherman's facility. But if the repark facility was something the town didn't want to pursue, but wanted to put a funding source in place, so you know, dredging, our next dredging project is $3.7 million. A little bit better than that, it's 3.7 something. And the town has to come up with 50% of that. 50%. That's, and each dredging project will be more expensive. So how do we pay for it? How do we pay for bond that pays for dredging? You know, we lucked out last time. We saved money, and then the state gave us a grant for the balance of what we needed. That isn't going to happen this time. The state is going to give us 50% of what it costs to dredge, and that will be. We've been fortunate with the last two projects, the dredging in Tux Point, that we got a contractor that came in between the two projects, $1.2 million less than anyone else for those two projects combined. It's a huge savings. And there's no guarantee we're going to get those kinds of savings going forward. If we hadn't on this Tux Point project, that would have cost over $2 million and not $1.2 million. So it's about making sure that your harbor is usable for the foreseeable future. I think Anne and then Vicky.
Yeah, I'd like to say that I think the Harbor Walk would be a real attraction. This is a chance to go quite a distance around, seeing the harbor from different angles. It brings you right down to the water, which we don't have much. Yes, you can go right down to the water if you're willing to go all the way out to Tux Point, but this in the middle of downtown, where you could just, you know, bring a deck chair and sit and watch water up close. I haven't seen a lot of harbors that have this sort of thing, and I think it would be good for the town. And I guess that's all I have to say.
Thanks, Dan. I will say that, the staff did, mention to me that people do like to come down and sit under our little canopy where the staff sits. After hours, folks will come down and sit there and look out and enjoy the view. Vicky, you had your hand up?
I think there was leftover.
Oh, a leftover hand.
I'd like to make a couple of comments. I don't think the fisherman's facility is the numbers don't really work. I mean, the income versus the cost, even after the grant, the cost is 130 to the town. Your income is 4,000. I think we're subsidizing the fishermen, which is fine, and but we should accept that this is not a financially viable fund paying project.
Well, remember, it's not 580,000, it's 20% of that.
The
And
fisherman's facility
qualified
would
for
cost
more
us about
grants.
130, I think, yeah, net to the town. The whole project is a lot more. Reed Park extension, on the other hand, which, you know, by the grace of God, you somehow have got 100% financing for the extension, or you believe you can. That is a no-brainer. That provides a substantial amount of income, which is what you were talking about earlier on, in excess, you think, in excess of 100,000 or so.
Yeah.
And that I think has value. I think there's been studies done, I think maybe you mentioned it to me, the Dartmouth study, where you have $1 in transient fees equals $8 to the town in restaurants or ice cream sales or things like that. And then, so that's just on the economics. The fisherman's facility, you know, that's gonna be a tough nut if you're just doing it as a project. Reed Park extension will not be. I think to put the pump out station at the end is a great location, right by the tracks. If that's
That
idea
would
to
be where I would want it.
to follow up on Anne's comment. The other day, I brought my grandson down to a fishing boat that was on that first pier. It happened to be belonged to Dan Lane, and I had a great pleasure in him showing my 3-year-old grandson the lobster. And I do like, I love cruising in May. I do like the sight of a working harbour. If I want a place to look over the ocean to look at Marblehead, I'll go down to Singing Beach. That's not a working harbour. That's a place to look at the ocean and look at the islands, etc. In the harbour, I don't go down to look at Marblehead. I go down to look at the boats. I much prefer to look at a fishing boat than a Mako 20. And I will never paint a Mako or photograph a Mako 20. But I've seen plenty of paintings of lobster boats, either on moorings, Dave, as you point, or in the dock. I just like the idea of preserving the history and culture of this town. Like it's not a parking lot, it's like a historic building. We're preserving part of our culture. In the Manchester Historic Museum, there are the cod fishing houses in the back there, where we're trying to show people what we used to do. We're still doing it.
Black Beach,
Yeah.
all those things.
So
Kinds of-
I agree, we're kind of subsidizing the fishing industry here, but I don't think it's a bad thing to do. And there's the couple of comments said, like,
Well, thank you.
But I also think too, when you spoke out before, Brian, that, being 19 out of 39 was a fishing port, that lends also not only, we give back in the sense that it helps us to obtain these grants for the dredging and any other things that may harbor improvements, because we are still maintaining an efficient fleet.
Right.
And if it ranks in the middle, I didn't know we were that high. To be honest, I would have guessed we were a little lower, but that's important. That's a give back to.
Yeah, so 2018, I show Manchester is ranked 46th out of 64. Landing $278,000 worth versus Beverly at 3.2 million.
Well, so I
Two
talk,
hundred and 78 in what year?
2018.
so I regularly talk with, I get my numbers.
That's way
from-
wrong. Yeah, that's way wrong.
No way. So I get my numbers from, what's the name of the woman at the Mass Lobster Association?
Mhm.
That's who I contact regularly, and she directs me to her information, which comes from the state.
Yeah, Commonwealth of Massachusetts Division of Marine Fisheries.
Is it overfishing or lobster? I wonder. Maybe that's the difference.
Well, so, no, that's a good question. It could be lobster. We don't rank high when it comes to fishing, because right now we have one seine fisherman. One.
This includes shellfish.
Yeah.
Beverly- Beverly
We don't-
Harbor.
we have no shellfish in this harbor.
Yeah.
No,
I mean, it includes lobster fishermen. These numbers include lobster fishing. Beverly and Marblehead are like almost 100% lobster fishing.
yeah, it's the predominant fishery.
Yeah.
In the,
Yeah, a couple comments, and as Maury suggested, it's you have to make decisions. Clearly, there's things to be gained by having safer access, having more boats closer to a place where they can tie up securely. So those are clear advantages. It's hard to tell exactly how much we're gaining on this without the bigger picture that's mentioned a couple of times, because I'm seeing spots for 6 or 7 boats. Currently there's one of those piers already exists, where there's 2 boats, and actually 3 when Manchester Moorings barge is tied up there, or one of those other vessels. There's also one on the backside of Reed Park, which we'll lose if we close that off. So I'm seeing 3 docks that are currently there that we're going to reuse. So that's 4 spots that are currently there with access to the walking dock. And we're talking about 6, maybe 7.
Yep.
When we're done. So really the net gain is only 2. It's not 6 or 7. We're not gaining 6 or 7 docks to walk to your boats. We're gaining 2.
no, we're providing 6 or 7 spots. We're not gaining. Only thing we're gaining is 2 places to put mooring boats. That's the only gain. What we're doing is providing a place where the fisheries can continue to exist here. If we don't, we run the risk of sending them all to Gloucester or to Beverly or some other harbor where they do have a hope someday of being at a pier when they get to an older.
I'm just trying to get the numbers right.
Yeah,
So
that right now? How many are on a pier right now?
So there's on the first dock, there's 2, and then there's a third that comes in, the Manchester Mooring barge, or he's had a.
Yeah, he'll come in and tie up in front of where Eddie Marsh
Yeah,
was.
he's been there most of the summer. And then on the backside of Reed Park, where the pump out boat is currently a dock that's accessed. Well, a boat that's accessed by the dock.
The pump,
So I'm counting 4 slips that are currently accessed by walking to them.
Right.
And we're gonna have, when this is done, 6 to 7.
well. On the Reed Park side, I'm on the Mascanoma side from the Fisherman's Pier, there's 2 boats that are accessed from there.
Well, and then there's the one that's head in.
Well, right, so
Those
that one
ones-
won't be there because there'll be no place for the barge.
So that's what I'm saying, we're losing that.
Well,
And we're losing the spot behind Reed Park. So those 2. are
the
getting
pump out boat,
eliminated.
the idea of the pump out boat was, since we have 3 boats, which is a lot of boats. It needed to go somewhere and I could have rafted it outside on to the eastern next to the public safety boat. Down, tied up to the float with a pump out, that's where that boat belongs. So we're not gonna put overnighters on the float where, right on the float where the pump out is, so we could move the pump out boat down there, eastern, and get the NOAA boat all out of that spot there.
So that speaks to this corner, that's why I'm saying it all kind of works together, right? Because if we see what we have now versus what this is proposing, I'm only seeing a net gain of 2 boats. Whereas if you extend Reed Park down, now the boats that are here go down there, and some other boats come in here. Now you're actually creating a gain, but it's not necessarily because of this facility, it's because of Reed Park as well. So taken individually, it's hard to evaluate the relative advantages of doing this. Because I'm counting 2 extra docks. As it is, but if there's more docks off of Reed Park, then, yeah, so we're shifting some from here to there, so there's more of a net gain. So that's one part of it. The other part is, it's the finances, and we're pulling boats in here, which are currently on moorings. So we're gaining revenue here, we're losing it from the moorings. So there's a bit of an offset there. So those numbers really sort of need to be vetted out, so we understand what the financial implications of this are and truly what the costs are. Not just the cost to the town. I mean, the cost is $580,000. It's taxpayer money, of which the town has part, but we all pay. It's all taxpayer money. So I think the number we need to look at is the big number. When we determine the economic viability. The other point I'd like to make is, currently where we have like 2 lobster boats and then that's the ramp in between, throughout the harbor. A lot of those ramps are being used as storage for nets and bait boxes and fuel cans and you name it. I mean, is it possible that these docks would be used for storage of traps and nets and other associated gear as well?
Certainly not if there's a regulation against. So that's typically what you see in a town where you have a facility like this. The regulations, there are no storing of gear on the fingers or the main water. That's it's a
Safety concern.
that's right. Who keeps the battery? We're good. So, 100%.
So that's part of the aesthetics that I would be concerned about as well. Lots of those one thing, lots of gear and traps and nets and all. I would say at a minimum, we want to restrict these to walking, not storage. But I too am concerned about the aesthetics. I mean, there's 14 new piers, new pilings being proposed. I mean, all of Reed Park is only 12. So this is more pilings in a more condensed area. It's going to look like a forest of pilings. And hopefully we can do wood. But if we find out they're metal,